Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our IVF webinar. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Apologies for being a little bit late. We had some issues, but I am very, very happy that we were able to fix this, and we are here tonight, and we will be happy to, of course, talk and discuss our topic, which is definitely interesting one, definitely a topic that brings lots and lots of questions. And here to present and also answer all of your questions, we have our special expert, of course, from Spain, because we will talk about IVF legislation in Spain. So here is the CEO and founder of Repro Clinic. This is Esther Velia, and I'm very, very excited to have you here with us, Esther. How are you feeling?
Fine, Caroline. Thank you so much for letting me to have this talk today and be with you and the patients there.
Thank you so much indeed. I'm already looking forward to what you have prepared for all of us, of course, in regards to our topic. And as always, we will start with the presentation, but afterwards, as I've mentioned, there will be time for your questions. So all you will need to do is just type those in the chat section, and I'm sure Esther will be happy to answer all of them. And I'm very happy to have you finally here, because of course, in the previous webinars, we already had a few doctors from Repro Clinic. So I'm very happy that you were able to join us this time. So this is your first time with my IVF Answers, so welcome, and we are definitely excited to have you here. And before we start, I just also want to mention that if you don't know yet, my IVF Answers, we are part of European Fertility Society, which has been created simply because we want to support you with those webinars, but there are other things that we are planning, we are doing to help our patients, to support you. We know that IVF journey can be a difficult one, and as you know, we are here every single day to answer your questions, to provide you with as many topics as we can. So this week we are starting to talk about IVF legislation today in Spain, but of course, as you may have seen, there will be other topics on IVF legislation in other countries. So yeah, that will be it. I'm very happy to be back once again. And now let's go ahead with our topic, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's go.
Okay. So on this talk, I will have a general overview of what the specific says the legislation in Spain, and I will focus a little bit on intonation. So at the end, you will be able to ask as many questions as possible, and I will do my best to answer all of you. So in general, just I want to let you know that there is no common legislation on human-assisted reproduction in Europe. Each country has its own law, but there is an overall directive, European ones, that are specifically for handling that traceability, transport of biological samples, including gametes and embryos. Spain was one of the first European countries that has a legislation for assisted reproduction, and this law has updated several times. And in general, it's one of the countries that has one of the most permissive laws. But when it comes that a couple or a woman wants to have a baby, there are no borders, and they just skip these things and move from one country to another to have the desired baby. So the first law came out in 1996. On that law were stated the protocols for gamete donors and all the protocols for assisted reproduction users, but in a general way, not very specifically. And then in 2006, we transposed the European directive that was specialized in the quality and safety of the donation, the procurement, and the storage and distribution of human tissues and cells, because you have to consider that gametes are cells and embryos are tissues. So it's the same law that regulates the organ donation. And we have a very room place there for cells and for embryos. This law has been transposed and updated several times in Spain, until the law that we have now, that's the last updated was in 2017. The main, I could say, lack of the law that we had from the beginning was that we didn't have a national register for egg donation, and we neither has the obligation to present the data to a national system. Well, on the law it was stated that we had to present the data to one general regulation, but on that time it was managed by by the Spanish Fertility Society. This Spanish Fertility Society was not an independent body, and was regulated by different scientifics and people that on the field that has already some other clinics as well. And there were few centers that were reporting that data at that time. But in 2015, the ministry just took this registry through a completely independent body and put the registry as a mandatory for all the clinics. So now every single clinic must send the annual activity to this registry, and this can be audited randomly to all clinics, and that's a good thing. The main aim of the Spanish law is to regulate in general, just for you to know how the law is about. The main aim is to regulate the scientific and clinical proven assisted reproduction techniques, to prevent the transmission of inherited or genetic diseases, to regulate the procedure, maintenance, and storage of biological samples, and to regulate the generation of human embryos and storage. The law is based that they don't want to accumulate a huge number of embryos storage on the clinics. Which treatments we can perform? We can perform all kinds of treatments, but surrogacy or gender selection. These two are not allowed or are not contemplated by law. That means that we can do low complex treatment as ovulation induction, as intrauterine insemination with donor sperm or parent sperm. We can also do high complex treatment as IVF with own eggs or own sperm, or with donated eggs and donated sperm. We can perform PGT without any problem, and we can perform fertility preservation. And with all that, that means that we can treat heterosexual couples, we can treat single women by choice. We don't need a partner, a man or a partner. And we can treat woman-woman couples by a regular intrauterine insemination with donor sperm, or with what we call ROPA, that it's a shared motherhood or reciprocal oocyte donation partner. That means that one of the girls is the one that is giving the eggs, and the other is the one that is receiving the embryo. So it's a way or a methodology that permits both women to share the maternity. The assisted reproduction, the law says, is very specific. It says that the assisted reproduction techniques can be only done if there is reasonable chance of success. So if we have a case that the chances of success are 0, we cannot do a psychological cycle. When we don't create a risk for the mentally or physically health of the future mother or baby, we need, before starting the treatment, to fully inform about the procedure to the patient, to inform about the risk, the effects, and all the alternative possibles. Also, the law contemplates that the limit age of the woman to undergo treatment is when she reaches her reproductive limit age. Look at that, when she reaches her reproductive limit age. The law doesn't specify a specific age of the woman. It says this sentence that is very ambiguity, because that means that, for example, a young woman that is premenopause or doesn't can ovulate, that's the reproductive limit, or we can have another woman that she ovulates and doesn't want any more babies. So it's a kind of ambiguity. So we established by law that by all the clinics that more or less the age limit of the woman could be 50 years old. Is one thing that we established in clinics, but it's not stated by the law, this number. The cancellation of the agreement between the patient and the clinic can be done anytime. That's very important. And we can only transfer a maximum of 3 embryos in each cycle. But in our center, for example, we have a policy of single embryo transfer, so we don't transfer more than one because we want to avoid the risk, prenatal risk for the mother of the baby. We want a safety baby, right? So the clinic, in order to perform treatments, has to be authorized by the competent body, obvious, and the renewal of the license is every 2 years under inspection. Who can be candidate for assisted reproduction techniques? Look at that. The law is very old-fashioned. It says we can treat women more than 15 years old. I say look at that because that means that we need a woman for the treatment. We cannot treat male couples because the assisted reproduction law, it says that we need a woman older than 18 years old, independently of his civil status or sexual orientation. The woman has been correctly informed, as I said, that include all the recent complications. We have to give them clear information, objective, and the patient must be able to ask all the questions, and we must answer all the questions. If the woman is married, the husband must sign the informed consent form. And another important thing that you have to point out is that the informed consent form gives the affiliation of the baby. So that means that once it's signed and the baby is born, the parents, both that has signed the consent form, cannot renounce to its paternity. Let me put you an example. For example, let's say you have an heterosexual couple that both of them sign the consent form for IVF. And then they have embryos, they transfer one, they have cryopreserved embryos. And after some years, things doesn't go well and they divorce. So the woman cannot thaw and use the embryos for herself unless she has the consent form for the husband, because the husband is the one that has signed the consent form, right? So let me point this out because it's very important. Also, on the consent form, there is the possibility of for the male to consent what he wants to do once he's in case of he pass away, what he wants to do with the sperm frozen that he has on the center in case of he pass away. In case that on the consent form previously he has already signed that and say that he wants to accept that his sperm in case of pass away can be used for a assisted reproduction technique with his woman, his partner. This sperm can be used within 12 months from the day of the death. Look at that. I mean, the law doesn't state that for the woman, because as I said, the law says that we need a woman. So in case of the woman pass away, there is no possibility of doing anything. Neither to transfer the embryos from one country to another, because to transfer the embryos from one country to another, we need the consent form signed by both members. So in that case, if there is any loss, we can have that. So the embryos will remain on the center. Also, the surrogacy is not allowed. I don't like to say it's not allowed. It's more that it's not contemplated by law, because the law doesn't say that the surrogacy is not allowed or there is a serious offense if there is a surrogacy. That's not the case. But there are two scenarios that are very important. The first one is that the law says that the contract between the biological mother and the intended mother are not longer valid. And also that the woman that give birth is the one that could be the biological mother. So with these two scenarios, if we put it together, we can see that there's no legal space for surrogacy in Spain. What the law says about cryopreserved material. So consider that the law, what doesn't want is to have bunch of embryos remain frozen at the clinic. So there is one scenario that says that we have to create enough embryos for the reproductive project of the couple. So that means that if a couple, for example, just want to have one embryo transfer and doesn't want to freeze any embryos, we cannot stimulate so much this woman, and we have to fertilize a limited number of oocytes because we cannot cryopreserve the remaining ones. The law also states that we cannot, the only way to do the termination of an embryo is that if this embryo is cryopreserved. Doesn't contemplate in any place of the law to terminate the maintenance of the embryo without being cryopreserved. That means that we have the obligatory of if we have good quality embryos remaining for one reproductive project, we have to freeze them. We have to freeze all these embryos. We cannot say, okay, we are going to terminate because the patient doesn't want it to freeze. We cannot do that. If we have remaining embryos of good quality, we need to freeze these embryos. And then the patients will sign the destiny of the embryos, whatever they want, but we need to freeze it. In case that we have, in case that we have embryos frozen at the clinic, we need to ask every 2 years. We do it in our clinic, we do it every year because we want to be sure that we know the destiny of the embryos, but by law could be every 2 years. We have to ask the destiny of the cryopreserved material, the cryopreserved embryos. By law, we have 4 possible destinies. The first is to use it for research. That seems easy, but the research program has to be a legally approved research project. And when we have a research project, we have to send to the patients all the information about the research, and they have to accept to use it for this specific research, and they have to sign a consent form. It's not that they just put research and that's it. The second possible destiny is to use it for their own reproductive project. That's easy. We will keep it freeze, and they have to pay the maintenance for the cryopreserved material annually. The third destiny will be to be used to another couples. That also seems easy, but not all the embryos. Let me tell you that not all the embryos are eligible for being donated, because for an embryo to being donated, both members that the biological members for the embryos must fulfill all the requirements for being a donor. So that means that if these embryos are from, for example, an heterosexual couple, the woman and the male has to fulfill the requirements for a donation, for a sperm donation, right? If not, these embryos are not eligible and cannot be donated. And the fourth destiny is the termination of the storage. That's easy in terms of, never it's easy to decide that, right? But what I want to say is that for a couple that decide to terminate the storage, we need to have 2 letters from 2 independent doctors certifying that the woman has arrived to the end of her reproductive age, because we cannot terminate one embryo unless the woman hasn't arrived to a reproductive age. Sometimes we have problems about that with some patients, because sometimes they send us the destiny that I want my embryos to be terminated of the storage, and we ask them for these letters, and they don't want to send. They have to go to different doctors and ask for that. And imagine that it's a young couple that really don't want more embryos. Some doctors are not going to sign that the woman has arrived to the end of reproductive age. But without that, we cannot, by law, we cannot terminate this storage. So it's one thing, and I think it's very important that patients know that in advance, because if not, could be a complication, and it's complicated to explain. But the law states that what could happen is that patient sometimes doesn't answer to these letters. And the law also says that after 5 years, after 2 consecutive uh, letters without any response, and consider between letters are 2 years, so we can talk about 5 years. In total, if after 5 years we don't have any response for the couple about the destiny, these embryos are considered abandoned. And if the embryos are considered abandoned, the embryos are the center is going to take responsibility for those embryos and can use it for one of the 4 destinies that we have here. We can use it for research, can use it for the first, for research, to give them to the couples and to terminate the storage. And the last thing that I want to explain is that the destiny of the cryopreserved embryos, when you sign it, can be revoked anytime. What the law says about PGT, about pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. PGT can be done without previous consent to the competent bodies in most of the cases. First, to detect any alterations of the embryos that can compromise the viability of the embryos. That means that, for example, PGT for aneuploid screening or PGT for chromosome rearrangements are completely accepted, and we can do it right away. And also we can do it without previous consents to competent bodies, all genetic disease or monogenic inherited diseases that are serious, that can be present in earlier stages and has no treatment. This sentence that it seems quite easy to read are very difficult to interpret in some monogenic diseases, because what serious genetic inherited illness means, what serious means, to be in a wheelchair is serious, or has to be more than that? What means earlier stages? Early stage means childhood or means 40 years old, considering that the average life is 85. For me, 40 years old, it's early stage, but not for everyone. So sometimes when we face monogenic inherited diseases, it's not easy to take the decision of doing the PCT for that specific disease without previous consents. And we need to present or to ask permit case by case. And this takes some paperwork and this takes some time. Most of the diseases are accepted. What is true that, for example, HLA cases and unlate diseases, as cancer predisposition, for example, must be approved by the competent body. So in terms of research, it's easy. We can use gametes for research, but we cannot use, and then we can not use it we don't have to use it for a treatment, right? And then we can only use embryos for research if we have an official approved research program, and if the embryo has not to be longer than 14 days into culture. There are 2 things that came out recently that are still experimental procedures and are regulated by law and needs permit for the National Committee, that are the cytoplasm transfer cycles or ovarian rejuvenation, that I'm sure that you have heard about that. Let me go now to gamete donation. In general, the gamete donation is completely anonymous and altruistic. We have to keep confidentiality of the donor for the clinics, and this must be guaranteed by the IVF clinics and by the gamete banks. And the identity of the donors can only be disclosed exceptionally in cases, for example, that there is a certain risk for the life or health of the child of the mother, or if there's any criminal procedure law or something like that. The children born and the recipients can only obtain general information about the donors. We cannot do disclosure, for example, even baby pictures of the donors. That's not allowed. I know that in some countries it's allowed, in Spain it's not allowed. And here's there are two important points that I want to point out. The first one is that the assisted reproduction techniques can only be performed in tissue establishments centers, in health centers with cells tissues authorization. That means that we cannot send sperm to the house, to houses, to perform auto-insemination. That's not permitted by law. In other countries, probably it's permitted. In Spain, it's not permitted by law. And also, the second one is that the medical team is the one that is responsible to choose for the matching of the donor based on the phenotypical and immunological characteristics. The donor cannot interfere on that process and cannot choose, cannot even interfere. The babies, the maximum number of babies born in Spain that is accepted per donor is 6. We cannot accept any donor that has more than 6 babies born in Spain. That's very important because the law says like that. And this is regulated under the National Register, CIRA, where we have to update all the donors and all the recipients and all its control under there. If the donor that has done a previous donation in another center, if you imagine that, for example, let me give you an example. If a donor do a donation, egg donation in another center, when came to our center, we have to put the identity of the donor on the system, and the system detect how many donations has the donor done in other centers and how many babies has been born from this donation. If that's more than 6, the donor is not allowed to proceed, and we cannot do the treatment. The clinical data has to be preserved 30 years in order to maintain the tracking of the donor in case of having any adverse effect in the future. Also, another important point is that the gamete donation publicity must be approved by the competent bodies. We cannot do publicity about the compensation of the donors. The only publicity that we can have is to give hope, and also we have to explain on all the publicity the risk and the limitations of the gamete donation. It has to be a contract between the gamete donor and the clinic prior to the donation. And as I said, all the data from the donors and the recipients coming from donors program must be registered in the National Registry CIRA. The requirements to be, let me go for the requirements to be a donor. When a donor came into a clinic, we asked about personal data, including identification and nationality, occupational history. We check the phenotype, race, height, weight, skin color, hair texture, blood group, and age. The number of previous donations, date and place. The men's has not to be older than 18, has to be older than 18 and less than 50, and the woman has to be between 18 and 34 years old to be able to donate. We do a complete anamnesis because we want to detect any genetic condition in the family. We do a psychological evaluation and a complete physical evaluation. Also, the sperm sample in case of males has to be normospermic following the whole health organization. We take the blood time infectious disease screening for different infectious diseases. If you want more details, I can send you that after that. And also look at that, the law says that we need to evaluate, we need to have, the clinic has to be, to perform evaluation of the genetic. I just state this sentence as the same way it says on the law. It says that the center has to do an evaluation of the genetic load in relation to the existence of autosomic recessive genes, will carry out according to scientific knowledge and the known prevalence in the donor's agency. that's very ambiguity. So based on that, most of the centers what are performing is a karyotype in order to detect chromosome abnormalities, and also a comprehensive genetic panel of recessive disease. That is what the technology is giving us. But as you know, the genetics has evolved very quick in the last years with massive screenings. So every day, new genetic diseases can be tested and are known. So, and based on what the law says, that according to scientific knowledge, all the clinics must put a limit. I mean, what we do, some clinics test for 100 diseases, another clinics test for 400, another test. In our case, we test for more than 600 genetic inherited diseases, but no, this is what in general the most important part is that the patients knows that it's impossible to test all the genetic diseases. We cannot test because first probably now we don't have this genetic test for that specific. Probably tomorrow we'll have it, but this is changing and evolving very quick. But the patients needs to know that we are carrier of genetic diseases and we can test this list of genetic diseases, and if they want more they can ask for more, but at least they need to have the information. That's the main part. About the SIRA, the aim of the national register is to register the data from the gamete and embryo donations, assuring the correct procedures, traceability and safety, to register the clinic's accreditation, to collect these clinical outcomes, and to ensure traceability of the tissues and cells. In terms of revocation of the donation, let me say that donation can be only revoked when the donor will need the cells, the gametes, for himself or for themselves. If not, cannot be revoked. And in terms of safety, as I said, we are routinely informed to the competent body about the adverse effects. We have standard operation protocols that control for the control and release of biological samples, and also we have the national registry where all the traceability are registered for all the gametes and recipients from the beginning to the end. In general, the most offense or the more important offense or relevant infractions are by Spanish law are the use of gamete donations that has already obtained more than 6 babies in Spain. As I said, it's only 6 babies in Spain, or 6 IVF cycles, to transfer more than 3 embryos, to perform obviously assisted reproduction techniques without being authorized, to transfer into the womb embryos created by a mix of different oocytes. So that's also very important because people don't know that in general, because in some countries it's allowed to for example, imagine that a couple that wants to try an IVF with a sperm donor because they need a sperm donor and they want to choose 2 different sperm donors and to see which sperm donor is the best. So they inseminate half of those sites with one sperm donor or half of those sites with own sperm or with sperm donor. So in case of we have embryos creating from that, we cannot mix embryos from one source or another and transfer into the womb. In Spain, it's not allowed. In some countries, for example, United States, it's allowed, but not in Spain. Obviously, non-authorized research is also an infraction. To permit the development of the embryos more than 14 days. To perform gender selection, that's very important as well. It's not allowed, and it's a serious offense, and there is a penalty for that. To use experimental techniques, and to breach the confidentiality of the donor and the anonymity, because that's also very important. Some of the patients push about, we see some baby pictures? No, we are very sorry, but we cannot disclose all that because it's a serious offense and there's a penalty for that. and also not to inform patients of relevant information. And that's very important as well, because we need to inform about all the details that there are some details that probably we consider not relevant or not important, but are important for the patients because the patients don't have all the information and they have the right to have all the information. I want to conclude. In general, it's very important to point out that in Spanish, that the Spanish law is highly secure and controlled. Centers are inspected and audited every 2 years. And all data is officially registered by the Spanish Fertility Society and can also be audited, as I said before, by them anytime, randomly. There's another point that is very important. Is we have highest standard quality established, apart from the ISO 9001 2015 that most of the clinics have. Spain has established and developed a specific normative for IVF lab quality system. For IVF lab is what we call UNE 179007, and that accreditation is specifically and regulates the quality of the assisted reproduction. And most assisted reproduction techniques can be performed, but in general, we can perform all but surrogacy and gender selection. That's a general conclusion about the talk. And I think I finish here. So if you have any question, I will be glad to answer you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Once again, it's been great to have this presentation. We've done some of the webinars, of course, on legislation before, but there are some new things that you have talked about. So especially with the cryopreserving material. So definitely interesting. Thank you so much for that. And as you can see, there are like 2 questions right now. But of course, if you have more questions, go ahead, type those in now. It's our Q&A session time. Okay, let's go ahead. Ready for some questions?
Ready.
Great. So let's have a look. Emma has put the first question here. So do you have donor embryos available for single ladies or the embryos made from couples? Is there a waiting time? Thank you, Emma, for your question.
We have embryos available for just one moment. My screen went okay, sorry. We have embryos available. These are embryos that are considered abandoned, as I said before. Normally these embryos are good embryos because that means that most of the patients that abandon one embryo is because they already have one embryo transfer that has given a pregnancy. So we have another good quality embryo. So that are good embryos by itself to transfer. And we have, there is no waiting list unless there's some specific phenotype that is not common in Spain that probably we could have problems, or we cannot be able to have any embryos that match. But on the abandoned embryo donation, there's no matching for that. So in general, we have abandoned embryos.
All right. Thanks so much for the very first question, and of course for your help with that. And let's have a look. More questions are coming up, as you can see. So let's have a look at the other one. So is there a waiting time for donor sperm, or is it as and when required?
No, there is no waiting time. In general, there is no waiting time for gamete donation or sperm donation. We work with a lot of donors, and for example, in our clinic, we work with a sperm bank, and there's no waiting list in general.
All right.
As I said, unless there is a very specific phenotype that we don't have much donors, but it has to be a very specific case.
Of course. Makes sense, of course. Thanks so much for that question as well. Okay, if you can clarify this one, is egg donation allowed from a family member?
No, because, the only egg donation allowed from a family member will be in case of ROPA, reciprocal oocyte donation, in case of lesbian couples, in case of woman-woman couples, because when a couple is married, the confidentiality is no longer exist by the Constitution. is not longer exceeds the confidentiality between both partners. So that means that we can break this anonymity from the egg donor. So one woman can give the eggs and the other woman can receive the embryos. But for example, in other cases, for example, I have a sister that can give the eggs for me or a relative. That's not allowed because we break the confidentiality, and it's not allowed.
All right. Thank you for the clarification to this question as well. And can you have a look at this one? So, do you do any PRP treatment?
PRP, can you clarify?
Ovarian rejuvenation, I believe that, Deborah, that's, yeah.
No, we don't do it at the clinic. As I said, it's experimental research, so we don't do it at the clinic.
All
No.
right.
Yeah, you have to ask permit for that, and actually, it's not one of the things that we.
It's
do.
still not something that is done like it's still experimental, I think.
Yes,
Yeah, it's still
experimental.
considered. Thank you so much, of course. Thanks for that. All right, so let's have a look at the next question. So, is there any shortage of donors for matching due to COVID-19?
No, has been for a while when we had the lockdown that we need to stop the clinic for. I'm talking about the first lockdown in 2019 when we have to stop the activity. 2020. But not now. Now the things are in routine and normally, and there are a lot of donors. And no, there's no problem with that. And we do PCR for all the recipients and for all the donors. We do the screening, we do the PCRs before the treatment, so there is no any problem with that.
All right, that's good to hear. Then, of course, that it's still going and it's it's still possible to find donors. That's good. Thank you so much indeed. And let's have a look. And can you tell us what is the price of single embryos?
What you're talking about single embryos, you're talking about abandoned embryos, embryo donation. Is that?
I believe so. Yeah, Deborah, if you can clarify, of course.
I don't like to give prices here, but I can give you estimates. It's half price of the IVF cycle, more or less, for a donation. It's around 3,000 something. But if anyone is interested in specific data and on prices, they can contact us. They can do a first medical consultation without any commitment, free of charge, and we can inform them about any aspect they may need more in detail about, because every case is completely different. So we can inform them specific of your situation, for example.
And that's understandable, of course, as well. Thank you so much indeed. Let's have a look. More questions are coming in, and let's have a look at this one. If planning on using, we're planning of using a surrogate, I guess. Do we have to get our embryos shipped outside of Spain for treatment?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's not possible. I mean, we have a lot of questions like yours daily, but it's not possible because we are interfering in something. We are involved in something that it's not allowed on our law, and the competent body is very strict on that, and they don't allow to. If, for example, let me explain you one situation. If we have to ship the embryos from here to another country that is outside the European Union, we have to ask permit to the competent body, and the competent body are not going to allow any exportation of human embryos that are going to be for surrogacy. So that's a huge problem. I know that it's a concern of many people, but we cannot do that.
Of course, that's if it's not possible, that at least we cannot change that, right? But thank you so much, of course, again for clarifying that. And how about, do you have a limit for BMI for frozen embryo transfer in your center?
We have a. It's not we have a cutoff of that because there are plenty of things to figure out. But in general, we we recommend not to be more than 32 BMI over that. But as I said, Marian, we can check your case specifically, and we can see your situation, and the doctor can analyze that.
Well, thank you so much once again for that. Okay, there is like a comment, yeah, from Deborah in regards to embryo. Sorry, just let me go here. So yeah, thank you for cost of embryo program. I know they're different. Okay, good. So approximately, but if you would like to get some more details, Deborah, right, you can contact Esther, her team at Repro Clinic, and I'm sure that they will be able to help you out, right, with more details and give you the exact price as well, right?
Yes. No, let me just point out one thing. One thing is the embryo program, and also in some cases it's recommended to also do a mini IVF. That means that we will use a few number of eggs to perform to create an embryo, and also it's cheaper than a regular IVF cycle with egg donation. So that's another option, Deborah, that if you want, like, we can give you more information.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to just one more thing, yeah, if you can clarify, you have mentioned so surrogacy is not allowed in any European countries. It is allowed in Greece, right? For sure.
I don't want to enter into that because I'm not expert on surrogacy. I think surrogacy in Greece probably is not regulated by law. Is why they are doing that. One thing is you have to differentiate between countries that are allowed by law or are not regulated by law, right? So, Marian, if you want to choose a country, be sure that they have that my recommendation will be sure that it has a specific law for surrogacy in order to avoid problems. But there are some countries that you can choose in Europe.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Russia, Greece, probably Ukraine.
Yes, that's we had some webinars, so yeah, definitely Greece, definitely Ukraine. But as Esther said, it's always about checking the exact laws, yeah, because of course those can be different countries, different laws. So just be careful when checking it, of course, as well. Someone is typing. Okay, so let's have a. Okay, here it is. Do you recommend transferring if endometrium is about 6-7 millimeters?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, a medical doctor. Probably I'm not the right person to answer that. But we are transferring with endometrium 6-7. It's a good size.
Thank you so much. And I just need to wait for another question if we have. Someone is typing again, so let's give it a second and see. If you have more questions, I can only encourage you to go ahead, type those in, and if not, we will be finishing. But again, someone is typing, so let's wait. And in the meantime, while we
questions that will come out in some time, I'm open to receive as many questions as you can have, and I will try to answer you all.
Of course, that's
after today.
Yes, of course. Remember that we are here to give you some answers, to provide you with some answers. However, if you have any left or you would like to get some more details, yes, because of course here it's really hard to give you more details. So you know, you can always get in touch with the team at Rebel Clinic, and I'm sure they will be able to help you out. And okay, sorry, there is follow up from Emily. Can you repeat again whether no anonymous egg donation is allowed?
In general, the regulations say that the egg donation has to be anonymous completely. But there is only one scenario that is non-anonymous that is contemplated by law, and it's when two women are married, legally married, because during the marriage it's considered that there is no confidentiality between both members of a marriage. So that means that this is a breach of this confidentiality or anonymity. So in those cases, we can treat women one of the girls is the one that is donating the oocytes, and the other is the one that receiving the embryos. It's the only case. The rest of the scenarios are completely anonymous.
Okay, perfect. And just give me a second. So let's have a look at the follow-up once again from Emily. So for male-female use of donated eggs, then the child will never know their genetic parent.
That's a very open question. Well,
True.
yes. I mean, let me. I don't want to answer like depend. In general, I could say that no. I mean, based on how is the legislation, the child are not going to know the genetic parents. But what can happen? What will happen? And you know that there are these DNA data banks that you, for example, can take a hair of yours, put it on an envelope, send it to United States, just to check for who are your ancestors, for example, right? So they take the genetic data, they put it on the cloud, and they have all your genetic data. Imagine, for example, that one donor do that to know whatever they want to know, not for the donation. They want to know, I don't know, the ancestors, or they want to know another information that it's not relevant for the donation. And you do the same. And all this data match on the system uh, could came out with a matching system, right? So in general, what I want to say is that in general, the system is protected not to be able to know the genetic identity of the parents for an egg donation. But apart from our system, there are a lot of companies and a lot of countries that has different regulations in terms of protection data. And now actually I can do whatever I want, just put it on the envelope and sending in whatever country that has a different regulation. I don't know if I explain myself well. It's not, we can control, and we are controlling what we can control, but we cannot control what is happening outside Spain. Am I clear answering that?
Well, you can see that, yes.
Understand what I'm meaning? It's
Yes,
not an easy question.
it's definitely not an easy question, but still, thanks, Emily, for that. I mean, of course, that is definitely important to talk about it as well. So thanks so much, Emily. Agreed that all
Thank
is
you.
clear. Thanks so much indeed. Let's have a look. Might be our final question. Can having high testosterone affect equality, and do you have any recommendations to lower testosterone?
I would prefer if the doctor can answer these questions for this specific case, because I am not specialized on that, so I prefer not to say something that is not correct. I recommend you to have a consultation with the doctor. As I say, it is free of commitment and free of charge, and you can discuss that with her or him, depending on the doctor you choose. Christy, I'm very
Of
honest.
Of course, that makes perfect sense. Once again, no problem at all. Actually, when we finish, you will be redirected to Esther's profile, and there is an option to contact Esther and her team. And I'm sure they will be able to help you and provide you with more details, right? Thanks so much. Okay, it looks like that was our final question. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining, for your questions. As always, you never disappoint. It's great to be able to see that you are interested, as we are here every single day. So it's always wonderful for me to see that you do come here and you ask questions. Well, that's why we are here. Thank you so much, Esther, as well, for your presentation, for answering all the questions. Someone is typing, so I just want to, yeah, it's another thank you. And before we finish, Esther, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I just want to only say that Spain is a very secure country in general for assisted reproduction techniques with a high quality level and very regulated. So I welcome everyone.
Perfect. And actually, in the meantime, one more question is right here. I still guess we can answer, right? So, are there any Southeast Asian donors in Spain?
Southeast is a very specific. We have Asian donors. You know that Asian donors are not easy to find because in general is they are not prone to donate. It's culturally, but we have some Asian donors, not much. I mean, if you ask, probably we have waiting list for that.
Right. Again, thank you so much. And actually, one more. What about Middle Eastern?
The same. Is the same pattern. You have
Mhm.
to consider that Barcelona is the location that we are placed. Barcelona is a city that is very cosmopolitan. We have plenty of students or people that come to Barcelona for work, for doing 1 2 years, or to study 1 2 years, and we have a mix of ethnicities here in Barcelona. So we have plenty of NECs, but as I said, there are some NECs that are more easy to find, and others are more difficult, and probably some can have waiting lists and the others no. But in general, we have donors.
All right. Again, thank you so much for those additional questions. Definitely interesting to know. And thank you so much once more. We will be finishing. And Esther, again, it's been great to have you here finally, as I've mentioned before.
Thank you so much.
And I do hope that we will have another chance to have some more webinars with you in the near future. And as always, remember, it has been recorded. You will be able to find this tomorrow on our website, myivfanswers.com. And as you know, there are more events coming up. Tomorrow, we will talk about ovarian aging, actually. So you can join us if it's something that it's interested, if you are interested in this topic. And well, again, thank you so much. Have a lovely, lovely evening, everyone. Esther, till our next event, okay?
Thank you all.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Take
Thank you.
care. Good
Bye.
night. Bye.